Hi, and welcome to Let's Chat. I'm your host, Valerie Costa, and I'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to our sponsor, River Valley Community Bank. We appreciate you. Today, I'm speaking with Natalie Adona, the Clerk Recorder / Registrar of Voters for Nevada County. Welcome, Natalie.
Thanks for having me here.
It is my pleasure. So, the first question that most people would probably have is, what exactly does a clerk recorder do?
Okay, great. Appreciate you asking and inviting me here. The Office of the Clerk Recorder is a constitutional position in our state constitution, and we basically do recording services, vital services like birth certificates, death certificates, marriages, and we also run elections in our office. I mean, there's a lot of detail that goes into all of that, but you know, that's the elevator pitch.
Yeah, all right. So if one wants to get married, this is where they go to obtain their wedding license, their marriage license.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you want to get married in Nevada County, you come to our office, we get you the license, and even if you just want to get the license, I mean, that's fine, but you can also do the ceremony. And I mean, that's always nice for our staff to be able to marry people. And, you know, we have a great wedding room. So if you're planning on getting married, come on down.
Yeah, that sounds much less expensive than the wedding that I had. So, that sounds really nice. And, you know, more easier than like running off to Vegas, I suppose.
Well, I mean, if you're here, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So the other part of that, of course, is the elections, which you touched on. So we got the year off of elections, which was probably really nice.
It was nice. we had a long series of elections. I think in Nevada County since at least 2012, there was at least one election every single year up to this point, and so we kind of breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, we get to have a little bit of a break from all of the sort of elections stuff.
Yes, to gear up for next year, which is a big one. It's a presidential election, of course. So walk me through in, broad strokes, the processes that go into place for an election to happen.
Sure. Well, we start planning about a year or more ahead of any election. And there's a lot of moving parts. So we've got to adhere to a printing schedule. As everyone knows, a lot of our elections materials are printed on paper, including the ballots. So we have to basically get in line with a bunch of other counties, not only in the state, but across the nation to try to get all of our materials printed on time. That means knowing things like where voting is going to take place and where all of those vote by mail drop boxes are going to be, so the public knows well in advance how they can return their voted ballot. And I mean, in fact, right now we're in the middle of a print job for materials that are going to go in the package with the ballots. So, I mean, yeah, it is really important to stay on schedule and to know where everything is, to have all of our contracts in place, and to make sure that all of the voting location owners still agree to, sort of be a host to all of those activities. In addition to that, we're also preparing for candidates to file for office. That typically starts 113 days before any election. And, we also have this process if the smaller districts want to put stuff on the ballot. They got to notify us 125 days before the election. So we definitely work more than just a day.
I'm sure you do. And you're talking about the drop box locations. I, as a voter, am very grateful that we have so many options for voting. We can vote in person, but like grocery outlet, I remember the first time I walked into grocery outlet and saw a ballot box there, I was like, oh, how convenient.
Oh, nice.
And there are so many like really easy to access locations. It makes it really convenient. So thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Under the law, we're obligated to establish one drop box for every 15,000 registered voters. So, the way registration is right now, that means like 5 or 6 drop boxes, but we establish a lot more, I think, because, there are so many people who live far away from, sort of the town, basically, that, you need more locations to make it extra convenient for people. So, the mail is always an option, the drop boxes are an option, and then we also establish early voting vote centers and election day vote centers if people choose to vote in person. Basically, I can give so many options to people and I don't have to say no.
Yeah, it's wonderful because, I mean, you see on the news those like people standing in line for hours to vote, and I'm like, that sounds awful. But I'm a big believer it's our civic duty to vote in every election. I've voted in every election since I was 18, so this is something that's near and dear to my heart.
Awesome.
It's our civic duty, vote, and be an informed voter. So right now you're in that kind of starting to gear up process. Do you have any kind of like voter registration drives, or is that something that is done outside of your office?
Typically, it's done outside of our office. There are organizations, of course, that are welcome to do voter registration drives. Most of them will probably use the online portal that's hosted by the California Secretary of State to do registration activities. And in fact, anyone can go onto the Secretary of State's website and either check their registration, register for the first time, make updates to their registration. And, in fact, I highly recommend people do that before any election, but especially before a presidential primary, because we have some candidates that limit their voters to only those registered with their party. So you should definitely check, make sure there are no surprises. I mean, because sometimes there are. Sometimes when our citizens go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, they don't realize that their registration is being updated, especially if you change your address and you might not realize that maybe your party affiliation might have changed. So it's always good to double check, of course. Up to Election Day, we will correct any deficiencies with registration, but the sooner you come to us with that, the better off you're going to be.
That makes absolute sense. Don't leave things to the last minute. That's good advice for no matter what you're doing. So I know I wouldn't know this if I were you because numbers slide out of my head, but do you know offhand approximately how many registered voters there are in Nevada County?
There's going to be a little bit over 75,000 registered voters, I believe. It might be over or under depending on what point in time we're talking about. We did something this year called the off-year report of registration. That occurred in October. The off-year ROR was in February, but then we had another one in preparation for this election in October. So I believe the October registration had us just under, but it sort of fluctuates depending on what day, but I would say safely around 75,000.
That's perfect. General terms are great because I think everyone understands it's going to be in flux. People move, people pass, people whatever.
People turn 18?
People turn 18. My daughter got to vote for the first time in the last election. And it was a big thing. I had always taken her to in-person vote since she was very small and, so that she could see the process. And so we do the same with our son. It's something that we value as a family.
How old is your son?
My son is 8. My daughter is 19. So that's why last year was her first time.
Maybe a little bit soon for him to pre-register. But teenagers can pre-register starting when they're 16 years old. And when they turn 18, then they'll be eligible to vote for that election where they turn 18.
Oh, that's great information.
Yeah.
I'll try to remember that for 8 years from now.
I know. Maybe a little soon. But I am confident that you are preparing him nonetheless.
Oh yes. It's a big value in my household. So there... is a lot of controversy about election integrity, and I trust the integrity of elections, but just to put the minds of those people who might not be as confident at ease, what steps do you take to ensure election integrity in Nevada County?
Well, first and foremost, we make sure that anyone who wants to come to our office and see the process is shown the welcome mat. So, our business hours are 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Right now, there's not a heck of a lot of elections stuff going on that most of the public cares about, like, ballots and what have you. But anyone who wants to come to our office is welcome, and we will sit down and explain everything. So, I think that that's a really important part of the process. We also invite election observers to come see, and the election observers are typically from political and non-governmental organizations, like, the Republican Party, Democrats, all of the parties, all of the nonprofit organizations that really care about voting. We make sure to send them a letter telling them exactly when stuff is going to happen, and give them brochures and other information. We also have election integrity sort of built into all of our processes. So, we will do checks on every single element of the elections process, whether that means proofing the ballots to making sure that anyone who has custody of a voted ballot is not by themselves. We have a 2-person rule. We usually have more people with the ballots than 2 people, but at minimum, there's got to be at least 2 people. And we have a rigorous chain of custody where, anyone who's transporting materials from one location to another, we make sure that they sign, that they tell us exactly when they delivered things. We also, make sure that our voting equipment has the proper seals and the documentation of all of those seals, so we know exactly who went into a piece of equipment, who handled it, where it is at any point in time. So yeah, we've got, tons of paperwork. I always joke that elections are a huge paperwork party, and an important part of that paperwork party is making sure that we are tracking and documenting everything, especially when it comes to important materials like the voting equipment and ballots, protecting people's personal information when they apply signatures to any of the documents. We want to make sure that those are stored safely. There's just so many things. I could go on and on, but, I think that the main thing is, come in, see our process, see how we do things, and, then, after that, judge for yourself where we need feedback and where we're doing well.
Well, you sound like you really know your stuff, which I would hope so. So tell me, actually, I'm going to switch gears now. Tell me a little bit about you and your journey to this elected position.
Sure. Well, I can tell you right off the bat, I never envisioned myself running for office ever. That was sort of a surprise to me. But I'll go back, sort of far back in time. Well, I guess not so far back. Yeah, I know. Cue the
the Wayne's World.
Yeah, I know, right? So back in the day, I remember being a teenager voting for the first time and being like, wow, this is like really cool. I voted, for the record, on one of those punch card, like butterfly ballot machines, hanging chads and whatever. But that was before the whole controversy with the 2000 election, and I felt really proud of what I had done. But, it wasn't until I went to college years later. I was sort of a late bloomer with my education. And
me too. Where did you go to college?
I went to Solano Community College, then Diablo Valley Community College, and then that, all of those credits helped me transfer over to UC Berkeley.
Oh, nice.
And it was there where, I first encountered a small research shop that had a little bit bit of funding from the U.S. Election Assistance Commission to study poll worker training. And I basically begged the lead researcher to let me help, and she reluctantly agreed. Probably because she thought maybe I wasn't that serious about it, but I think she was pleasantly surprised to see that I, sort of stuck it out. And that became the basis for my very first job in elections ever in the city and county of San Francisco, training their poll workers.
Oh, wow.
But my timing was a little bit off, as I had been a temp there in San Francisco and also in Alameda County, but it was right about the time where the economy tanked, right, in 2008, and, the headline was, what do we do now? And no one knew what to do. So governments were not hiring, and I, sort of switched tracks from, sort of small government to research, which, I also had a footing into. But, I always thought about that first job, right? And in the interim, I got, my graduate degree. I also got my law degree, and, I went to school in Washington, D.C., had done some, internships for a bunch of voting rights organizations, and ended up at this private philanthropy called Democracy Fund, which was so random because I'm like, philanthropists care about this kind of stuff, like, ballots and, okay, that's cool. So they had onboarded me as a researcher and to do grant making for research projects. And I was there for about, 5.5 years. And then, one day I rushed back home to California because my grandfather passed away suddenly. And, it was very unexpected. And, I just felt so far away from my family and was like, I need to find work in California because this is just way too much. Plus, Washington, D.C. was sort of like, it's a great place to meet people, but not really where I ever imagined myself landing.
It doesn't seem like a great place to live.
Well, it's just a lot of, who are you? What do you do? And, I sort of missed the, we care about you as a person and not exactly what you do and, who you know. No offense to my friends in D.C., but it just wasn't for me. So I heard through a friend that Nevada County was looking for an assistant registrar, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll throw my hat in the ring, and I wasn't expecting that much from it. And then I got a phone call from the clerk recorder at the time, Gregory Diaz, and he said, well, I happened to be in Philadelphia because my daughter bought me tickets to the Rolling Stones.
Oh, wow. That's a good daughter.
Yeah, I know, right? And so he's like, so is it possible to meet up? And Philadelphia for me, where I lived, was only an hour and a half on a train. So I met him in Philadelphia, and we met in this lobby of the place he was staying, and I talked to him for about an hour, and I sort of walked away, and I went, well, I don't really know how that went, but, I guess we'll see, and I'll just continue my journey. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, he called back and offered me the position, and I was really surprised, and somehow worked that out, but was really, I think at the front of my mind, I'm like, I get to go home. And, from where I grew up in Vallejo. My grandmother and my mom still live there. It's only a 2-hour drive. And it just felt so much closer than the 3,000 or so miles, that Washington, D.C. is from California. So I'm really grateful to, had come here, and, just right before COVID shut everything down. That was just so nice. And I don't mean that. That was, that kind of sucked. But, I was so glad to land in a great community, especially in a community where people, they're really engaged. They pay attention to, local politics, state politics, national politics. They care about voting. They care about community and each other. I was like, oh, yeah, cool. And, it's like, practically in the forest. So, that's awesome. Was through that, sort of 2020 elections experience where, I sort of thought about it and went, maybe I should throw my hat in the ring here too. I mean, Greg had wanted to retire for some time, and the way that sort of the political atmosphere was, wasn't really friendly to elections, and a part of me just really wanted to protect this process for Nevada County voters, whether they sort of like me personally or not. I want to make sure that everybody has the ability to vote and to have that ballot count to the fullest extent of the law. So I mean, to me, protecting that process was key. And it's like I want to stay here because Nevada County's awesome, right?
It is.
Yeah. So I threw my hat in the ring, and I have to say it was probably one of the toughest periods of my life running in that election, but it worked out, and here I am, and man, I am just so jazzed to have the team that I have, and to be able to serve the voters, because I mean that's really what we're here to do.
Yes, I love that. What a great story. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Well, I always like to know the person, not just the role, because I care, not just what do you do, but who are you?
Oh, yeah, I can tell that you care.
What are your hobbies, speaking of you as a person?
Oh, well, I am sort of dabbling a little bit back into my artistic side.
Oh.
So, way before I decided to, sort of go back to school and, grow up a little bit, I did a lot of theater, actually.
Oh.
One of my friends keeps posting to his Facebook page all of these old pictures from back in the day when we were all in these shows, and I'm like, okay, remind me never to cross you because you probably have documented evidence of me. I mean, this is all before Facebook and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, so you have actual photographs in a shoebox somewhere, and I am terrified. So, but yeah, I mean, he's posting stuff, with all of the shows that we did, a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of just sort of, local theater stuff. Actually, one of the theaters that we did a whole bunch of stuff in was named after the Federleys, which, I think the Federleys actually ended up in Nevada County doing theater here. A lot of my friends actually asked me a lot of questions about Nevada County because they used to sort of do regular shows with the Foothills Theater Company, which I don't think exists anymore.
It doesn't, but yes, we have a wonderful performing arts culture here, and visual arts. I mean, we're very artistic, so you're in the right place for that.
I know. Yeah, no, it's so great. And a couple of my friends who are in the film business have even submitted to the Nevada City Film Festival. I think one of them got through, actually. And I mean, it's just so cool. But I mean, I don't have time for theater, but I do my little paintings at home, and I took a pottery class, wheel throwing, with Renee Spratling in Nevada City. Nice. And I did. I mean, it was hard, but I made these little bowls, and I'm like showing pictures to my friends. I'm like, I made a pottery. Oh my God.
That's great. It sounds like a nice balance and stress relief from the regimented, everything has to be this way. Art seems like a great way to get your creative side flowing.
Well, you got to have something, because you can't be thinking about all of this sort of very consequential stuff all of the time.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of people, elections especially, but I think government, sort of in general has become super consequential. You can't, vote for the wrong person, you can't, vote for the wrong thing, or, there will be universe-ending paradoxes. And, I'm not here to, sort of disagree with anybody, but, as a human being, you need to take a break from some of that stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, thank you. Gosh, this has been fun. So if anyone wants to know what's happening with your office, how would they do that?
Well, absolutely. Well, we have a website. It's nevadacountyca.gov/elections. You put that in there and you will know all the election stuff. If you want to know more about recording and, sort of county clerk business, it's nevadacountyca.gov/recorder. That'll get you to our main page. You can always, sort of visit our website. You can sign up for our brand new newsletter, which I've called the ballot bulletin.
Oh, so cute.
I know it's a little cheesy, but
cheesy's good.
Yeah, if you go to our website and go to the About Us tab, and you'll see a link to the ballot bulletin, and you can use your email, sign up for it. You can see current and past issues. I mean, there's only one issue, so you haven't missed much.
You can see the current and past issues all in one document.
Right, and sign up for the thing. And, as always, you can stop by our office. We're at the Rood Center. We're in Suite 210, upstairs, all the way down the hall. We're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, except for holidays. We do try to take a break on the holidays. Or email us. We have an elections address and recorder address. So for recorder, it's nc.recorder@nevadacountyca.gov. For elections, it's elections.mail@nevadacountyca.gov.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. I really enjoyed this. And
I enjoyed it too. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure. And thank you for joining us for Let's Chat. We'll see you next time.